I surprised my cheating wife with divorce papers during her secret hotel getaway. Introduction. Hello guys, I hope you are all doing well. This is a pretty long and messed up story. Sorry for any errors, as I am writing on my phone. I've come to the end of my rope and have no idea how to navigate this mess. Background. A bit of background. I am 43, and my SO of 40, and I have been married for 16 years. We have 2 kids, a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. Our marriage was very rocky in the beginning, but we made it through those tough years and came out much better. We married young, so maturity wasn't all there yet, but we knew we loved each other and could conquer any obstacle that came between us. I'm still not sure whether that was wishful thinking. Anyway, my wife is a manager of a very big advertisement company for 3 years, and I'm in engineering, 7 years. Both our jobs pay well and provided our family with a good lifestyle. We were a very tight-knit family. We always made time for our kids and created great memories. Honestly, I consider myself a good dad and husband. I messed up sometimes when it came to my wife, but I did anything for her. And it honestly shocked me to my core when I found out she was in a long-term affair. The discovery. Which brings me to discovery. Bree was acting distant. In fact, the last 2 years before this one were the hardest. She just didn't seem to like anything I did. She kept comparing me to her boss. Yes, I know now. And would always tell me how he would handle things. Can't read her mind well. Her boss can. Don't take initiative to take her out on dates and make her feel special. Well, her boss does that for his wife. Why was I so immature? I would ask what she wanted me to do to spice up our love life. Her answer was usually, "Don't ask. You need to already know and do it." So I researched, bought books. Since I was clueless, someone else had to have the answer. Anything I attempted was met with either half-hearted appreciation or bitter disappointment. My wife was never like this in the years I'd known her, so I thought that her inability to make me happy was something I seriously needed to fix. Little did I know it wasn't me doing the fixing the entire time. We were very close to her boss and his wife. They also have kids, and the kids loved each other. We brought them to our barbecues, family outings to the park, game days at the arcade. They've been to our house numerous times, and we've been to theirs. It's no surprise that we became close. I would confide in her boss about our marital problems. He gave me good advice. I thought he was a swell guy. Confirming the affair. Anyway, back to the discovery. I had grown emotionally tired from Bree's constant demands to better myself, as if our marriage were already done. I was honestly shocked by her attitude, because before all this, I thought we had a great marriage. So one night, she was busy laughing and giggling while texting someone. I was next to her in bed and was curious. The moment I leaned my head to take a peek, she viciously pulled away and instantly became angry, asking me what I was doing. I told her I wanted to see what the joke was, and she replied that it was none of my business and retreated to the bathroom. I think that's when I knew deep down that there was an affair going on. I did not have proof, though. I made the mistake of asking her directly the next day. She was furious and denied any wrongdoing. I didn't have access to her phone, but I wanted the truth terribly. I asked for her phone, and she refused. Only later that night did she grudgingly give me the phone. Almost every text message she sent to certain people was deleted. I could tell because some conversations were inconsistent or downright ridiculous. I gave her the phone back, and we did not speak of it until a month later, when I managed to get a buddy to check the phone and recover deleted texts. My wife had gotten another phone earlier and hardly used the one she handed to me. Some texts were recovered, and from bits and pieces, I finally had proof of an affair. And you guessed it, with her boss. I knew that if I confronted her then and there, she would find a way to weasel out of it. So I bided my time. I was a wreck, though. All I could think about was how this would affect the kids. The situation was horrible, and I cried in front of my buddy. I still didn't want to give up on our marriage. So 3 days later, I bought How to Help Your Spouse Heal from an Affair. It's okay if you're shaking your head. I started reading, hoping that if I gave the book to my wife, she would stop this nonsense. I wanted her back. I wanted to save our marriage. I had planned to talk to her that Saturday to work things out, but she told me she had an emergency at work and not to wait up for her. Naturally, I contacted her workplace to confirm her story and received no answer. They weren't open on Saturdays. I tried calling her phone. No answer. She came home at 2 in the morning on Sunday, immediately showered, and then went to bed. I asked why she was late, and she dodged the question by saying she already told me not to wait for her. I was sick of it. I did not give her the book I bought. I was suffering, and she didn't care. She saw my suffering and still didn't care. I contacted her boss's wife, Lisa, to see if she knew anything. I was desperate for stability, and to this day, I don't regret doing that. She was as shocked as I was. She wanted to confront her husband, but I told her he would probably lie and hide it better, just like my wife did. We met at her house to discuss what was going on, and I gave her the little proof I had. She wanted more evidence, so we both decided to gather evidence from our sides and compare them. I started snooping on my wife more, and she did the same with her husband. It was very easy for her to find undeniable proof. Her husband was so arrogant, he didn't even delete the texts between him and my wife. And the little texts I found earlier finally made sense. We had a complete picture of the affair. 2 years. Lisa was livid, and so was I. She wanted revenge, and so did I. They slept together everywhere, at her house, at our house, in expensive hotels, on business trips. It was sickening to read. They even sent each other pictures, but we decided to ignore the images so as not to scar ourselves. We wanted revenge, but not to have an affair ourselves. We both decided that if they wanted each other, then they can have each other. We both drew divorce papers around the same time. We were dead set on it. Our spouses didn't know that we knew, and we played our parts. By the time our ducks were in a row, they were at it again. This time, by collaborating with Lisa, we knew exactly where and how they would be served. We knew which hotel they had booked for their weekend of fun. I personally went there with the sheriff. I waited in the lobby as the sheriff got things in order, and then my wife was called down from her room. She did, dressed in a bathrobe, and I fear nothing else. She was panicking, frantically asking me what I was doing there. It wasn't too far from our home. The sheriff asked for her confirmation, and in a confused manner, she affirmed and was served. It was very satisfying to see the shocked look on her face, but I didn't want to rub it in. So I walked away, knowing the job was done. She wouldn't let me go. She held my arm, pulling me back, demanding to know what it all meant. I told her, "You had an affair, and I'm leaving you. Simple." She started screaming and pulling my arm hard. The sheriff had to step in and order her to release me. She did, then started crying, telling me she could explain, that I had the wrong idea, that it was my fault. I grew angry and left quickly to get home. My wife informed her boss, and he panicked. From what I was told, he rushed home only to be served there. We did not give them time to get their heads together. We blindsided them, just as they had blindsided us. My divorce will be finalized in a couple of months. Hers might take a bit longer. Both my wife and her boss have been fighting us on the divorces. Neither wants a divorce. They claim it was purely a sexual affair, nothing more. People have worse affairs and still maintain a great marriage. They mess up and then want a chance to unfuck things. I asked my wife what she thought the outcome would be, and she said she was going with the flow, completely out of character. She is not that person anymore. I told her, "You're an idiot." People around me are calling me evil for not giving my wife another chance. My kids know what's going on, in an age-appropriate way. And they're 100% behind me, though they'd like us to stay together. My resolve is slipping, especially since we still live in the same house, and my wife is going to therapy and reading the book I brought. It's getting harder to stick to my guns. She says she's remorseful and will do whatever it takes. All I tell her is that she's sorry she got caught, and that's all I need to know. She's called me bitter and resentful, unable to see past all the negativity. She apologized later, but I know that's how she feels. The boss's wife, Lisa, and I still talk, and my wife absolutely hates that. She thinks I'm going to have a revenge affair, or that the boss's wife is the reason I won't give us another chance. She's repeatedly asked me to cut off all contact with Lisa, just as she did with her boss. I told her she's crazy. We did nothing wrong, so why should I heed your opinions? I think I'm done. I have no respect for her. She still refuses to give up and is actively trying to engage me about her feelings regarding the affair. I see it as mere excuses, so I don't entertain her. She wants me to do therapy with her. I've read enough to know some therapists blame the victim, so I was like, hell no. She wants me to read infidelity books with her. What's the point if we're going to divorce anyway? She wants to be intimate. I told her she's not going to manipulate me with sex. She insists it's not manipulation, and that she just wants to show me how much she loves me. I corrected her. Loves me now, you mean? People around me are frustrated with me, even my mom, because they say people make mistakes, and my wife learns from her mistakes. I told them I will never be anyone's fallback plan. I feel terrible for how I treat her. I still love her, even though there's a lot of hate too. Am I being unnecessarily cruel? She's trying hard, but I just don't care. Should I reconsider the divorce? People say I'm moving too quickly and will regret it. Is that true? I don't know what's real anymore. Edit. Thank you all for taking the time to respond to my situation. I have read all your comments. Some touched on important subjects, and I will discuss them with my wife soon. I will keep you updated, but I believe divorce is the best route for me and my kids. Reading here has helped. Update for the story. Okay, I'm back again. I'm trying for the second time because I've been getting emails asking for an update. Thanks for your concern, guys. I understand your curiosity, and I'd like to clear up a few things. Firstly, my wife and I are in a sort of good place right now. Not because we're reconciling. No, I'm still divorcing her. The last update I posted, which was taken down by Automod, detailed our situation. The short version: my wife is still begging for another chance and is doing everything she can to get it. I will not give her that chance. Her affair was too long for me to get over. If it had been a one-night stand, that would be different. But no, 2 years is a slap in the face. I have attended several therapy sessions with her because I'm not a monster and still love her. One session was very good and helped me understand that my wife is actually remorseful. She hasn't been perfect in handling the fallout, but she has tried hard. The second session was a mess. She was upset with me for continuously contacting Lisa, and she was afraid of a revenge affair. It was the angriest I've ever been during this mess. And we argued a lot later because I refused to cut contact with the boss's wife. That was resolved when I promised her there would be no revenge affair. I know I don't owe her anything, but she's still my wife until the divorce, and I want to keep my commitments. I've continued therapy sessions with her just to see her progress. Yes, the therapist is both an individual and marriage therapist. No, I'm not attending solely because I want to save our marriage. I want to see her progress and participate if necessary. After the divorce, I plan to step away gracefully. The boss's wife, Lisa, is still separating from her husband. He's still fighting her in the divorce. She is as adamant as I am, and we do confide in each other during low days. I still don't see any affair happening. We're just on friendly terms, that's all. She's a strong, independent woman who takes no Fs from anyone. My kids are fine. They know that even though we're divorcing, our love for them remains. They don't want the divorce, but they understand it's necessary for us, in an age-appropriate way. My wife no longer works at the advertisement company. She resigned shortly after I served her. According to her, she's been in strict no contact with her former boss. She even reached out on forums for help in saving the marriage, and I've been reading a lot here. At first, I didn't understand why people stayed with adulterers, but after seeing my wife work hard to better herself, I see the temptation. She isn't a monster. She's just flawed and made horrible choices, which she's now trying to learn from. She has offered me everything for another chance, but I'm not sure I have it in me. The closer the divorce comes to finalization, the more at peace I feel. We recently had a long discussion about her asking for a chance after divorce. She even offered a postnup. I wasn't entirely opposed, but it would be a very long road before I could consider it. She seems willing, but I don't see how that would benefit any of us, honestly. A huge part of me wants this divorce as a matter of fleeting justice. It's the only justice I can get, without lowering myself to an adulterer. My mom and I reconciled after I revealed more about my wife's affair, although now she's absolutely furious with my wife after learning all the details. I still don't know how to navigate that one. Rant? Revenge affair? Okay. I didn't want to post here until my divorce was finalized, but I'm pissed off today and need to vent. As many of you know, my wife is terrified of a revenge affair, simply because I'm still in contact and see the other woman my wife betrayed, Lisa. My wife is very insecure compared to Lisa. The affair boosted her ego, and she loved feeling beautiful and desired. She admitted the affair was a fantasy that would never last. She rarely thought about the consequences, but did from time to time. She regrets the affair and says she will carry that guilt forever. She claims she could never hold a candle to Lisa, and that I would cheat back, because Lisa is not only beautiful, but also a woman with integrity. Not once has Lisa said anything mean or threatening to her. That's just my wife's insecurity, and maybe my own anger at her betrayal. Here's where it gets interesting. The therapist asked what it would take for me to consider my wife's proposal. Nothing came to mind. I joked, a time machine, because what I have now is a sham of a marriage that I never signed up for. She argued that every marriage faces problems, from infidelity to death, and that it's how you handle those problems that shows the strength of the marriage. I honestly couldn't believe where the conversation was headed, and I told the therapist to focus on my wife, not us. The therapist said my inability to listen to logical reasoning might be a problem, communication-wise. I did not disagree. My wife and I had a long talk during the drive home. She asked if I felt emasculated by her affair. I answered yes. Then she shocked me by asking if I would feel better if I slept with another woman. I told her again that I'm not, nor will I, have a revenge affair. She explained she was proposing a trial separation, where I'd go out and regain my mojo while she remained faithful until I was ready to come back. I thought her proposal was crazy, and I rejected it outright. My wife has been strangely calm and patient these past few weeks, like a different person from the insecure one before. Of course, I know not to trust her entirely. Even though she doesn't want it, she has been very generous in the divorce. I've read many stories where divorces turn nasty, but not ours. It almost feels unreal to be in this situation. It's hard to navigate. Edit. Let me make it clear. I'm still fully going through with the divorce. I'm interested in hearing your opinions on this. Update. Back again. Hello, everyone. I have another update in this sorry state of my life. Before I get into that, I'd like to thank everyone who has reached out in support. Currently, my wife and I have decided to be civil and spend the holidays together as a family, for our kids' sake. It will be the last holiday ever, although my wife still hopes otherwise. Our divorce will be final by mid-February. For those curious, we split everything half and half, although she's been very generous on her side. I'm not sure if it's a tactic, and she might turn nasty later, but so far, she's been nice, and admits that I was a great husband and father. So she feels I deserve a more than fair divorce, considering what she has done. That doesn't mean she loses a lot in the divorce. I do get slightly more thanks to her. I have decided to stop going to therapy with her. It was giving her false hope and mixed signals. She has confessed a burning desire to be intimate with me throughout my absence, understanding that I felt emasculated and undesirable because of her affair. She's been trying frequently to engage me in sex. In all honesty, my wife hardly initiated sex before all this, so it upsets me that she's doing it now. Over time, I grew to appreciate that she saw it as a hang-up of mine and wanted to address it. I've rejected her advances, but she still persists, adamantly stating that this has nothing to do with reconciliation. She just wants me to feel good and desired. I have cut off contact with Lisa for now because things were getting too personal. To anyone calling it a revenge affair, you aren't far off. I didn't even realize until Lisa confessed she wanted to see where our relationship might go. She stated she would wait until my divorce was finalized before anything happened. I was confused and had no answer, so we agreed to take a break until everything is sorted out. Lisa is attractive, but I'm not sure I can return her feelings. Someone insinuated that being around Lisa is affecting any potential reconciliation with my wife. I assure you, I have nothing to do with her decision to leave She's done with him. And that's that. We do not badmouth our spouses when we're together. Even met me in person to apologize for everything that happened. He was always arrogant, and this experience humbled him. I did not accept his apology. Call me petty, but I don't give a bay about what he's going through. I have one question. Is it okay for me to have sex with my wife, even if we're not reconciling? I must admit, I miss the intimacy, the closeness. My wife is eager and has tried everything. New lingerie, sexting, touching, letters, etc. Sometimes I find it hard to resist. She even disposed of, burned, and replaced anything related to in our home without asking, because, frankly, I didn't care where they had been intimate. It's not easy to switch off these feelings. Is this a trap? Am I being played? Before anyone suggests kick her out, I've already tried that. And I want her here because it's less hassle until the divorce is final. Rant/revenge affair? It's finally dawned on me now. I thought I wasted years on a woman who was worthless. But she gave me great kids and great memories, things I will cherish. But I finally understand. I can do better than her, and I'm going to do better. I've had countless people give me advice on how to deal with this, and I finally realize I deserve better. She screwed me over, put me down, made me feel inferior when another man paid her attention. She literally invested her energy in another dude. I can't believe I'm finally coming to terms with being over her. Now, she does whatever it takes to keep me. And she's investing her energy in us. Now she wants me to be happy, even though she never cared before. Now she wants to be adventurous in our sex life. The sex we had was never mind-blowing, but I liked it. Now I see how much I've missed out on. Through her texts with I see just the tip of the iceberg of their graphic trysts. Now she wants to show me how much she loves me, when, admittedly, she has been quite lazy before. Now she gives me space, is happy, and supports my boundaries. Now she sees me as the king I always wished she saw. But no, I had to knock her off her pedestal first. Now, she is the ideal woman. But it seems fleeting. Now she is completely transparent with me about everything. She's brutally honest, even if it upsets or embarrasses her. I've never seen any woman with a constant look of shame like that before. She wishes the affair never happened. I see how much she regrets it every day. I see the hopelessness on her face when I'm not receptive. It makes me hate myself sometimes, but I see it as necessary. Why can't I view this as a positive? Why shouldn't I judge her actions now if she shows remorse? Many people have LTAs and come out stronger. Why am I basing my decisions on emotion rather than mature objectivity? Someone else will end up with the better, improved version of her, while I venture into another uncertain relationship. Why fight for this when everything seems to point to something better in the future? I have one answer. I will not accept disrespect. Perhaps I was willing to in the early stages, but I quickly woke up. This is for those who have PM'd me and regularly asked about my situation. I'm going to enjoy Christmas with my family and then move on from my wife. I've decided to stop listening to the nonsense I created in my head to let her control me. And I will not date her or give us another chance. It's over for good. I'd like to say my wife isn't a villain. That's true. But I want her to be happy, and it will never be with me. I am calling another betrayed spouse, Lisa, today, and offering her dinner after the holidays for her support when I hit rock bottom. She said she would love to. I know this rarely happens, but we really supported each other through it all, and I owe her thanks. And before anyone accuses me of planning this with Lisa, I truly did not. My emotions have been so screwed up these past few years that the thought of another woman never even crossed my mind. And it's just dinner. Nothing more, unless we both want it. But the closer the divorce gets, the more I realize I actually have options. And one option has been right there. What about OM? I don't give a flying fuck about him. I do not think I will ever marry again, and I will tell any woman that. Although the divorce wasn't too hard financially, I am still losing a lot of money. The whole idea of marriage now seems like a sham. Sorry for being so cynical. I'm still jaded. I gave my best years to this woman, and I'm starting to realize how little I got back. Happy holidays. You won't be hearing from me for a while. Update. Officially divorced. It's been a long time coming. I mentioned before I'd update one last time here. It's over. My ex and I have officially separated for good. It happened almost 3 weeks ago. For several days after, I grieved like I lost a loved one. It hit me extremely hard that my marriage failed so spectacularly. I've never cried that hard since discovering the affair. I raged a lot too. Definitely one of my lowest points. Everything has been organized for my ex, partly for the kids' sake. She moved out of our house, and I'm looking to buy her out of her share. She now lives in an apartment, a big downgrade for her, which depresses her. She's still going to therapy, and we've had long talks leading to minimal physical contact after the divorce. I know I shouldn't entertain her now, but she's still the mother of my kids, and I want us to be good co-parents. I'm as logical as possible about the situation. Largely thanks to this community, I've come to the same conclusion. She wants to reconcile, but it's too risky for me to give her another chance. Unfortunately, I'm not willing to do that. This past weekend, I accompanied Lisa to dinner, just to enjoy her company and chat. We talked about all sorts of things. Things got flirty, and, not going into too much detail, the night ended in very passionate sex, probably the best I've ever had. Lisa is a very giving person, definitely far superior to my ex. I didn't plan for it to go that far, but we were both willing. I learned some new tricks in the process, LOL. I doubt we'll pursue a serious relationship. I think the hormones and wine got the best of us. But she said she'd wait until my divorce was finalized, before we tried anything further. I'm undecided on returning her feelings. I don't know how to handle that. I feel very good, though. The sex with Lisa helped my self-esteem tremendously. I felt desired, alive, and finally understood what I'd been missing. I will never settle for less. I'm proud of how I handled everything, even if I did lose a substantial amount of money. But it was because I listened to people with experience instead of going in blind. For that, I am forever grateful. Takeaways. Respect yourself. Never accept disrespect from anyone. not even those closest to you. Everyone deserves a healthy, fulfilling relationship. Don't settle for scraps. Every committed relationship should have a healthy, fulfilling sex life. If your partner isn't giving their all, especially if they did so before an affair, don't tolerate it. Communicate, communicate, communicate. If you're betrayed, only you can truly heal yourself. It took me a long time to understand this. There's more, but that's all I can think of right now. I'll be available to answer your comments, but in a few hours, I'll stop posting here for good and move on with my life. Have a good one, everyone. Update. Things are meh right now. Hey guys, I've been getting a ton of emails from people checking in on me. I've been purposely staying away from anything involving infidelity because I still get triggered. I'm still dealing with the trauma, so I've been away from this site to move on. But since many of you are concerned, here's an update. I'm okay. No accidents, no vanishing. I'm still here in IC. Lisa is still my girlfriend. She settled her case with OM regarding child custody and finances in a mature way. There is some friction between the children, but we're handling it as best we can. We've started therapy for them, though my daughter, my ex, and OM don't get along well. There's definite tension when they're together. My ex-wife wants a second chance and is probably angry that Lisa is in the way of me seeing things clearly and not wrecking my life. She's delusional. I'm genuinely worried about her antics. At a 4th of July party, she tried something, and I shut it down. Maybe not firmly enough. I didn't expect her to be so desperate, but you all were right. She wants to come crawling back. Lisa and I are handling it, but she hates Lisa with a passion. I really thought my ex was changing, but since I left her for someone else, she's been a train wreck. I treated her better than anyone else, yet she treated me like crap. The moment I said F you, she flipped, desperate for attention. I'm not sure if I should be angry about that. So there you have it. You can rest easy now. I am worried about my daughter. That's it for now. Hi all. I am not new to Reddit, but I am new to this sub. I've been looking for good sources to help with my situation. Feel free to check my history for more background. But here's a summary. My ex-wife had an affair that lasted approximately 2 years. During that time, she was abusive and constantly compared me to our OM. Our sex life suffered, and I initially blamed myself for not being enough. Once I discovered the affair, I didn't immediately plan to leave. But eventually, when she left for an outing with OM and lied to me about it, I reached out to Lisa and we worked together to divorce our respective spouses. The affair was disclosed to our children in an age-appropriate manner. Mommy broke a promise to Daddy, with no details, just that we were separating, though we still loved them. The kids took it as well as anyone could, though they didn't want the divorce. And that's understandable. My ex-wife pushed for reconciliation, but I never intended to give her another chance. I forgave her to move on, and, as the divorce drew nearer, I accepted that it was necessary. It was costly, but not devastating. Shortly after the divorce, Lisa and I began a relationship. Initially friends with benefits, now more serious. Without our support, I might have stayed with my cheating ex, or worse, killed myself. I talk with my kids regularly to gauge how they're coping. I try to keep our conversations open, and if they dislike my relationship with Lisa, they can tell me without me being offended. My son, 10, loves Lisa. My daughter, 15, needs time to adjust, but says she wants to see me happy and doesn't want to interfere. I tell her I want her to be happy too. She says she's fine with Lisa and just needs time. We have had many discussions about healthy relationships, and I've spoken with my daughter about her fears. So far, she seems supportive. Lisa and I keep our relationship discreet to avoid overwhelming everyone. The kids, my son, daughter, and her 2 daughters, all are in therapy, including OM. This is indeed a bizarre situation, which leads me back to my daughter. The fallout from the affair has strained her relationship with her mother. She openly tells me she hates her because if it weren't for what her mother did, none of this would have happened. She is extremely rebellious towards her mother, sulking when it's her mother's turn, brushing off affection, and even once cursing at her, which made me step in. There have been arguments, and it worries me that my daughter is so deeply affected. My ex-wife is trying to repair things on her own, but there's only so much she can do. She wants my help in re-establishing a relationship with her daughter, since I chose divorce. I could point to her cheating, but that's on her. I'm above that. Yet it does cast doubt on my handling of the situation. Some points I worry about. My daughter has no respect for her mother. She wishes things could go back to how they were, not knowing her mother abused me. She's in therapy, but I'm not sure how effective it is. I worry she feels voiceless and overwhelmed. She's handling my relationship with Lisa well, but I fear she's hiding her true feelings. I worry I may have screwed up my kids' lives by divorcing their mother, even though I refuse to return to that toxic person. Any advice is highly appreciated. Update. I know you all are worried about me. Hey everyone, I've seen your messages and inboxes. I'm not as active here as I used to be, but I know many of you are concerned about my situation. Here's an update. I'm okay. No accidents, no disappearing. I'm still here in IC. Lisa is still my girlfriend. She managed her case with OM regarding custody and finances in a mature manner. There is some friction between the children, but we're handling it as best as we can. We've started therapy for them, though my daughter, my ex, and OM don't get along well. There is definite tension when they are together. My ex-wife wants a second chance and is probably angry that Lisa is in the way of me seeing things clearly and not ruining my life. She is delusional. I'm genuinely worried about her antics. At a 4th of July party, she tried something, and I shut it down. Maybe not firmly enough. I didn't expect her to be so desperate, but you all were right. She wants to come crawling back. Lisa and I are handling it, but she hates Lisa with a passion. I really thought my ex was changing, but since I left her for someone else, she's been a train wreck. I treated her better than anyone else, yet she treated me like crap. The moment I said F you, she flipped, desperate for attention. I'm not sure if I should be angry about that. So there you have it. You can rest easy now. I am worried about my daughter. That's it for now. I'm getting married in 2 weeks, and I am totally screwed. I literally need to get this off my chest. I feel like I'm going insane. My fiancée Lucy and I have known each other for about 6 years, and been engaged for 1. Our wedding is scheduled to take place in just 2 weeks, and I just witnessed something that makes me feel like I am making the biggest mistake of my life. Tonight, Lucy and I were taking a rare opportunity to relax at home. Lucy was in the kitchen making dinner, while I was out back working on one of my projects. As you do when you're doing heavy labor, I got thirsty and went back inside for a drink. I saw Lucy at the counter preparing dinner and talking on speakerphone. I recognized the voice instantly. It was my brother-in-law, Sam. Now, here's where my brain got totally twisted. Sam asked Lucy, in that familiar tone, where her sister Alice is, because he's been trying to get in contact with her, and she isn't answering texts. I distinctly heard Lucy say, "She just left here. She should be home in a half hour or so." It should be noted that Alice is Sam's wife of 5 years. I have to admit, I didn't immediately register what Lucy had just said. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a glass, and asked, "What was that all about?" Lucy replied, "Sam was looking for Alice." I saw her texting, and then asked, "What are you doing?" She answered, "I'm texting Alice that Sam was looking for her." I poured myself a drink, sat down, and as I sipped, my mind started to work. First, I remembered hearing Lucy tell Sam that Alice was here, but Alice was not here. The last time we saw her was yesterday, when she came over to help with last-minute wedding decorations. Secondly, why would Lucy text Alice and expect a response when I clearly heard Sam say that Alice wasn't answering? And finally, why on earth would she tell Sam that Alice should be back in 30 minutes, unless she either knows where Alice is or is right here texting her to tell her to get her butt home quickly? The only conclusion I came up with was that Lucy is lying to Sam about her sister's whereabouts, probably warning Alice that Sam will expect her home in half an hour. I spent the next 5 hours concocting various explanations for this behavior, some decent, some downright horrible, playing them back in my head. I wanted desperately to ask Lucy about it, yet I feared I wouldn't get a straight answer. The midnight discovery. About an hour ago, I woke up around 1 a.m. to use the toilet, and I couldn't resist the urge to check Lucy's phone. We both know each other's PINs, so it wasn't hard. I grabbed the phone, retreated to the bathroom, and unlocked it. And yep, it was exactly what I was afraid of, and probably what most of you expected. Lucy's sister, Alice, has been having an affair for about 6 months with a coworker, and Lucy has been helping Alice cover it up almost the entire time. There are literally hundreds of texts between them discussing it, discussing the coworker, discussing sex, really embarrassing things about my brother-in-law, stuff that makes my stomach churn. And here is my soon-to-be wife, going along with it all without batting an eye. I took screenshots of the entire thread, put the phone back where I found it, and retreated to my home office. Here I am now, typing this on Reddit to avoid the primal scream I feel coming out of my mouth. I am 100% screwed, Reddit. I cannot marry Lucy. I just cannot do it. I can't imagine any reasonable excuse she could offer about assisting her sister in this affair and victimizing not only Sam, but also their 2-year-old daughter. Meanwhile, my family, Lucy and her family, have sunk an enormous amount of money into a wedding that's supposed to happen in 2 weeks. There is no way we are getting any of that money back. On top of that, I feel like an absolute fool. How did I not know this woman was like this? And what the hell am I going to do? I can't marry her. I absolutely cannot. Yet, a part of me still wants to. She's beautiful, fun, and kind. And I once thought we had a bright future. She's never done anything directly wrong to me. But now, it's like a big black stain on an otherwise beautiful picture. I just don't know how I got this so wrong. And I'm dreading what I must do next. I feel like I want to vomit or break something. Immediate edits. Edit 1. Guys, you don't need to convince me not to marry Lucy. That's obvious. The wedding is off. I'm just trying to figure out my next steps and work up the nerve to do it. There's incredible pressure from everyone's expectations, but I'm not going to buckle under it. I'm more than a little angry to be in this situation. Edit 2. It's 5 a.m., and I have work in 3 hours, running off only a couple of hours of sleep. I'm going to take a shower and head into work a little early to avoid Lucy and Stu on this. Thanks to all the supportive people here, and a big raspberry to those dillholes saying I should figure out whatever good reason my soon-to-be ex-fiancé had for this garbage. Edit 3 - I got into work around 7. No one was in the office, so I decided to pull off the Band-Aid and call my brother. He lives in Australia, so he was still up after putting his kids to bed. It was hard breaking the news to him, knowing he spent a huge amount of money for flights for his family to come. But credit where it's due, he didn't say a word against me. He backed me up, saying, "You work in a job where you deal with liars and scammers day in and day out. I don't blame you for wanting a place where that isn't a concern." He was totally right. And I now understand why I'm reacting so strongly to Lucy's deceit. He also had a great idea. He was going to take his family down to Florida for some sightseeing and park visits. Now the kids will be accompanied by their uncle, and since we were going to honeymoon there, it should be easy. I'll rebook everything to be closer to him and his family, and offer Lucy's ticket to either my sister or another relative. I haven't had time to read everyone's comments, but I've answered a few. Right now, I'm just making myself sick by drinking cup after cup of coffee, trying to distract myself until I can reach out to Sam. Edit 4 dash dash. I just did morning stand-up. My stomach is doing flip-flops from 2 pots of coffee since I got here so early, and I absolutely cannot focus. I feel like I can't do anything until I tell Sam what I know. So I'm taking a sick day and driving over to his house to see if he's around. If not, I'll call him and track him down. Sam is a teacher on break right now, and Alice works a 9 to 5 like me. So odds are good this works out. Wish me luck, Reddit. Edit 5. I got to Sam's house a little after 10 a.m. He had just put his daughter down for a nap, and we had a long, frankly brutal talk in the kitchen. Basically, he had suspected this for months now, but Alice was very good at covering her tracks, obviously with Lucy and a couple of mutual friends' help. I don't have all 6 months of text messages, just a couple dozen screenshots I sent to myself from Lucy's phone. But I gave him what I had and offered my help. For context, I'm a field analyst in the CU department of a mid-sized insurer, specializing in workers' compensation fraud. So I know a few things, and a few people. Now I'm working from my laptop in my almost brother-in-law's kitchen, trying to salvage whatever I can. I'm going to have to talk to Lucy this evening and quickly let my friends and family know that I won't screw Sam over. So far, I managed to rebook most of the honeymoon, although I had a problem with the ticket because Lucy was flying under her maiden name, and our carrier has a surname rule for changes. They allowed me to cancel, get a partial refund, and rebook with my sister, who will be accompanying her 2 brothers and nieces to Florida in a couple of weeks. I'm holding off on canceling the venues until I talk to Lucy. I don't want to tip anyone off until Sam gets his chance to confront Alice. But I will be informing my family and friends later today. I'm basically in a frenzy right now, canceling everything I can, and I'm heading down to the bank in a few minutes to open a new account and sort out my bills. Finances aside, some people mentioned them. It should be pretty good. The mortgage is in my name, since we weren't married, and I have the higher income. But Lucy contributed about $20,000 versus my $60,000 toward the down payment. I'll probably have to pay her out that money and a portion of the mortgage payments for the last 16 months. But it could be worse. Later, update from my buddy's house. It's about 8:30 p.m. right now, and I'm writing this from my buddy's house. His name is Mark, a former coworker of mine who's in the same field. As I mentioned in a previous update, I work as a field analyst in the CU department of a decent-sized insurance carrier. In short, I'm basically a private detective investigating potential workers' compensation fraud. As I hinted earlier, Sam asked for my help to find out who Alice was cheating on him with. All we had was a name. Let's call him Jake. I started by checking LinkedIn through Alice's connections, but that brought up nothing, which was strange. Sam had told me that Alice was supposed to go out for drinks tonight after work and wouldn't be home until around 9 or 10. I understood his suspicions immediately. I told him I would help, but he needed to come with me. I then contacted my buddy Mark, explained the situation, and he agreed to meet us later that day. The first thing we did was drive over to Sam's parents' house so they could watch their granddaughter. I don't know what Sam told them, as I waited in the car. After that, we went to Alice's workplace, one of those large commercial strip mall centers with nondescript offices in a row in a big, non-gated lot. We drove around until we found Alice's car, and I had Sam unlock it with the spare keys. I then handed Sam a voice-activated recorder and a GPS tracker to place in the car. Once done, we parked a bit down the street and waited for my friend to arrive and for Alice to leave. Mark showed up about 20 minutes later, hopped in the car with us, and around an hour after that, Alice came out of her office with 2 of her girlfriends and a tall, younger-looking man with sandy blonde hair. They were obviously holding hands, and I thought, "Damn, Alice, you're making it easy for me." I snapped a couple of pictures from the car and then waited for Alice to leave in her car so we could start tracking her. At first, I thought she might go straight to a hotel, but she didn't. Instead, she drove to a reasonably nice bar and grill in a good section of town and parked on the street. I drove by as she got out and entered the establishment, then found my own parking spot to go over the plan. First, we sent Mark in, since no one knew him. His job was twofold: get some comp pictures of Alice and Jake, and serve as my alibi. Sam and I waited in the car for about 20 minutes until I received the first series of text messages from Mark. They were pictures of Alice and Jake making out in front of their two female coworkers. Sam's suspicions were right. They were helping Alice hide the affair from him. He was very upset and angry. Evidently, one of the coworkers is married, and as a couple, they're close friends with both Sam and Alice, and both have toddlers around the same age. I asked Sam if that was enough for him, but he insisted he really wanted to know who this guy was. I told him we could find out later, but he was practically begging me, so I told him to wait. I texted Mark that I was coming in, then entered the bar myself. The first thing I saw was Alice and her crew laughing and drinking at one of those tall, round tables near the front window. As I entered, I paused, pretended to be surprised, and then called out, "Hi, what are you doing here?" She was obviously shocked to see me. Everyone around her tensed up immediately. Alice quickly introduced me as her sister's fiancé and said that we are getting married in 2 weeks. A flood of congratulations followed. I thanked them, then stuck out my hand to the blonde guy and introduced myself with my full name, hoping he'd respond in kind. He did, and I was a bit taken aback. He wasn't named Jake. I introduced myself to everyone else, then told Alice I was there to meet a coworker. I waved to Mark and excused myself. Once I got over to Mark, I told him the guy's name, and we both whipped out our phones to work on it. It didn't take long before we found him. He has social media profiles and even a couple of court case judgments. Everything fell into place when we discovered that Jake is actually his middle name. At that point, I was just grateful that Alice wasn't cheating on Sam with two different coworkers. It turns out Jake is 26, married, and has a 1-year-old daughter. Things just kept getting better. I texted Sam the guy's name and decided to push my luck by telling him to wait a few more minutes. Basically, I was playing babysitter at the bar. I was totally visible to Alice and her crew. I could see out of the corner of my eye that no one was happy about this, and my presence was clearly ruining their night. And that was good. I let it go on for about 10 minutes, then told Sam to text Alice that he was spending the night at his parents' house with their daughter. Soon after, I caught Alice taking out her phone, showing it to Jake, and then everyone began packing up. Alice came over, said goodnight, and asked if Lucy and I wanted to come over for dinner this weekend. I smiled, said that sounded great, and wished her and her coworkers a good night. Mark and I waited for them to leave, then paid our bill and hurried back to the waiting Sam. That was almost 2 hours ago. I did receive one text from Sam saying it was done, and he was heading to his parents' house for real this time. But my phone hasn't been blowing up, so I don't know what else is happening with Alice. I've been at Mark's since then. That basically concludes my part in Sam's story. If he was smart and followed my advice, he recorded his entry into the house. I'll find out later. My biggest priority now is to go home and tell Lucy that the wedding is off. I know she's almost 100% going to take it badly. There's no way she won't. But, as I said, I just can't marry her right now. I don't know what the future holds for us, or if we'll be done with each other, but we are definitely not getting married anytime soon. For those asking, why didn't you talk to her first? Why didn't you confront her? Seriously, are you people stupid? She stone-cold lied in front of her brother-in-law, someone she's known for about 10 years and considers a really great husband and father. Babe, maybe you're naive enough to think someone can lie that coldly and then later tell you the truth, but I'm not wired that way. Until that moment, I never had cause to second-guess Lucy or not trust her. but she was literally untrustworthy in front of my face, and I'm not going to let it slide or expect her to be honest with me. You don't know what it's like to have your entire view of someone shift in an instant. It's disorienting and, frankly, panic-inducing. I'm actually impressed I kept my head and followed my instincts instead of pressing her right away, because that led me to the truth. It would have been ridiculously easy for her to lie and delete those texts. And if she had, I would never have seen the horrible things she said, never realized how duplicitous and two-faced she could be, and never understood how little I truly knew about her. I'm going home to talk to Lucy. I'll update later with the final verdict. Don't expect it to be a good one. Wrapping up my part. Here's another update, because there is so much to go over. Most of it, if I'm honest, has been downright shitty, but I'll get to that. First off, I left Mark's house pretty late that night. Lucy already knew I was out discussing business with him, although she had no idea the business was actually about her sister's affair. Still, it was getting so late, and I was dreading going home and facing her. After 2 or 3 pep talks from Mark, I finally got off my keister, texted Lucy that I was coming home, and left in my car. As I mentioned in my last update, I was pretty surprised when I got home, because when I walked in, I saw Alice crying on the couch with Lucy. I hadn't seen Alice's car in the driveway, so this was the last thing I expected. I froze for a moment and almost turned around and left. This was not how I imagined this going down, and I knew Alice's presence would make a bad situation a million times worse. Still, I had friends to notify and wedding preparations to cancel. The proverbial clock was ticking. When I entered the room, both Lucy and Alice looked up in acknowledgement, but no tirade of accusations came. I just stared back, raising my eyes in question. The moment passed. Alice went back to crying. Lucy resumed comforting her, and I let the silence hang awkwardly for about half a minute while I thought. It seemed Sam hadn't mentioned my role in uncovering Alice's affair. I decided to play dumb, simply wanting to see how Lucy would react. I sat down on a recliner, put down my laptop bag, and took my phone out. Fidgeting with it, I asked, "What's going on?" Alice continued crying, but Lucy looked at me and said, "Sam is divorcing Alice." I figured as much. I then pressed, "What for?" Lucy stopped patting Alice's back for a moment. I could almost see her face twist, like the look a 5-year-old makes when told to eat broccoli. There was a pregnant pause until Lucy finally said, "She cheated on him." That response completely floored me. It was not what I expected. Sure, cynical readers might say the cat was already out of the bag, so there's no point in hiding it. And yes, that's true. But she could have feigned ignorance or said, "Sam accused Alice of cheating," instead of confirming it to my face. Maybe I'm being pedantic, but I pay attention to not only what people say, but how they say it. Alice wasn't happy. She crumpled on the couch, letting out a strange combination of a sigh and a sob. I wanted to press on, to go for the gold, so to speak, but I stammered a bit. Lucy probably took it as shock, and while that was partly true, it wasn't what she expected. I asked, "Did you know?" Lucy just nodded, still rubbing her sister's shoulder. I then asked, "How long?" Her answer came more easily than I thought. 6 months. I was shocked at how easily she admitted it. Alice was shocked too. She smacked her sister's hand away, and I think even Lucy was a little shocked at saying it out loud. I leaned back in the recliner, rubbing my face. Then I said, "We're not getting married." There were looks of stunned disbelief, a chorus of, "Huh? What?" from both sisters. I stood up and repeated, "We're not getting married. I can't marry someone who would cover up adultery, especially not for 6 months." Lucy sprang off the couch, arms open. Her body language screamed, "You can't be serious." I held my hands out and said, "I'm serious. I don't like this. Nothing about it. I don't like that you took part in this, and I can't get married to you with how I feel. It would be a mistake." Immediately the waterworks started. Lucy wailed, accusing me of not loving her, appealing to duty, money, the inconvenience, the embarrassment. It was all nothing new in my mind, but hearing it through her body-racking sobs was devastating. At that point, I probably made a big mistake. Or maybe not, because I don't know how long Sam would have kept my involvement off the books. In an effort to convince Lucy of finality, I said, "Look, I already canceled the honeymoon. It's not happening." I knew that was a bomb as soon as the words left my mouth, and the explosion was immediate. To her credit, Alice, always quick on the uptake, screamed, "You son of a—" and flew across the room at me. I'm not a huge guy, but I'm no slouch either. The force with which Alice lunged had me staggering backward. I barely raised my hands before she started raking my face with her fingernails. I almost lost the phone in my hand, but I managed to push her away and shout, "Alice, get off me! Lucy, get your sister under control!" Alice lunged again, but surprisingly, Lucy did exactly what I asked and wrapped her arms around her sister's waist, holding her in place. I yelled, "Get out of here right now, or I am calling the police," while holding my phone up for emphasis. Lucy pleaded, "OP, please come out. We need to talk about this. I love you. Don't do this. We don't need to do this." Even Alice said she was sorry. She wanted to apologize. I'm pretty sure that was a lie, but Lucy was visibly losing it. I didn't answer her. Her attempts to cajole me out of the office ended just as the police arrived at our front door. I could hear Lucy talking to them, so I came out. 2 male cops were there, one younger, maybe around Lucy's age, and one older and more annoyed. I introduced myself, pointed at Alice, stating that she attacked me, and offered to show the recording on my phone. The younger cop asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. He asked again. I said yes. Before he could speak further, I said, "Yes, damn it! I want to press charges. I have video evidence, and this is going to court. Or I'm calling your boss to handle it himself." They looked surprised that I knew his name. Not that we're friends, but given my line of work, I interface with local law enforcement often. Honestly, I was getting pretty hot under the collar. I don't agree with what the cops might be thinking, but facts are facts. Alice assaulted me in my own home, and I wanted her gone. Thankfully, the situation didn't escalate further. The 2 officers handcuffed Alice and put her in the back of the patrol car. She was squealing and crying like a gibbering maniac the entire time. Lucy kept repeating, "No, please, no," over and over. After a while, the younger cop circled back and asked if everything was okay. I just told them I was going to bed. He then asked Lucy, "Is everything okay here, ma'am?" Clearly fishing for more, but Lucy just nodded. Not satisfied, he began asking again. So I interjected, "If you want to go on a fishing expedition, you might want to do it on the lawn, where my doorbell camera isn't recording you." I think I pushed my luck with that guy one too many times. I was probably 30 seconds away from getting cuffed myself until his older partner intervened. The older cop, probably in his late 50s, and not wanting to process 2 arrests at the start of his shift, talked his partner out of further action. They left, carrying Alice away, hopefully out of my life forever. At that point, I wondered whether to stay here. My parents live a couple of hours away, and given my financial state in the short term, I ruled out staying at their place or a hotel. So, I decided to sleep in the guest room. Lucy tried to engage with me, or coax me to sleep in our bed, but I told her we'd talk tomorrow. I was too tired. Thankfully, she let me be, and I crashed hard, harder than I had in years. The next day, aftermath. The next day turned out to be the weirdest day of my life. I woke at 11 a.m. and saw that Lucy was still home. She had cleaned the entire house. The floors sparkled. The toilet shined. I could almost lick the minty linoleum. When she saw me, she hovered at a distance, unsure, as if questioning whether I had really canceled the wedding in a heat-of-the-moment decision. I took a deep breath and told her we needed to finish talking. She tried to sit next to me on the couch, and although I almost rebuffed her, I didn't. We're not getting married. But I didn't need to act like I hated her, because, truthfully, I don't. I was disappointed in her and disgusted by some of what I had read in the texts between her and her sister. But we were both hurting. I didn't want to make it worse. After some convincing, Lucy finally accepted that the wedding was off. She was not taking it well. She was a wreck, hyperventilating at times. I held it together better, though this was my decision, and I had had longer to come to terms with it. Finally, she asked the serious question. What about us? I know some Redditors will say that every infraction is grounds for nuking a relationship. And sure, calling off the wedding felt like dropping a Moab on our 6-year partnership. But honestly, I had no answer for Lucy in that moment. I said, I read all those text messages, and it showed me a side of you that I never knew existed. I'm not certain about you or our relationship anymore. I can't understand why you would go along with Alice putting down Sam and even egging her on, cheating on not only him, but their daughter too. She kept saying, I know it was wrong. I know. I asked her for an explanation, but she couldn't provide one. She said she got carried away and had to choose her sister. I told her that a good sister should keep you on the straight and narrow, not give you a free pass to be a douchebag. She agreed that she'd do better, but insisted that Alice had always been the boss when they were kids, and she was always the follower. I get it. I have an older sibling too, and while I'm more independent, I spent 18 years with him living on the other side of the planet, except for occasional visits. Still, maybe I had an advantage because my older sibling was a decent guy, whereas Alice is a piece of trash. Then came the second major shock in the last 48 hours. Lucy said to me, It's not fair. It's not fair. I asked, What's not fair? She replied, You were sexting that bimbo wife Candy girl on Instagram last year, and I got over it. I was so hurt, but I got over it. Why can't you get over this? Why? What the hell? Who is this bimbo wife Candy? I have no clue. I asked if she was high or having a psychotic break. That was harsh, but I haven't been doing any cybersex or sexting, especially not with some Instagram girl. I protested loudly, and Lucy began yelling through her tears. She claimed she saw the messages last year and decided not to confront me because I had stopped. Apparently, she had been checking my socials from my home computer, which should be boring since I only have family and a couple of work friends on there. I offered to let her log into all my accounts and check for herself, but she called me a liar, a pervert, and other names. She started throwing things, and I warned her that if she threw one more thing, I'd have her removed from the house, just like her sister. She swore at me, then stormed off to the master bedroom and slammed the door. I was so damn confused, I barely knew what to think. I went into my office, fired up my desktop, and searched Bimbo Wife Candy on Google. Sure enough, there was an Instagram, a Twitter, a Reddit, and even an OnlyFans. I clicked on one of the Instagram links, and up popped a post of an extremely busty woman, clearly pushing the limits of science and technology. And, get this, she's from Australia. Remember all the nice things I said about my brother? Turns out my brother Jack, after his wife and kids went to sleep, logged into Insta on my office computer, and was probably paying money to sex with this girl. What a great effing guy. I'd love to call my brother to confirm my suspicions and give him a goddamn earful. But it's 2 to 3 in the morning there, so that'll have to wait. I'm crawling the walls trying to sort out how I feel. I feel let down by everyone. Damn. What is this world coming to? I thought for a moment, trying to connect the dots between what Lucy saw me do and what she did with Alice. But nothing really adds up. Maybe she's more tolerant or forgiving than I am, which is why she didn't confront me when she saw this. But I wish she had. It would have given me a chance to tell her my personal stance directly, and show her how I would act. Maybe it would have helped her later, or maybe not. I don't know. All I know is this post is becoming a novel, and I've blown off most of the morning when I should have been working to get it all out. I feel better having done this, but there are probably another 2 or 3 posts worth of details left. I'm not going to post them to this subreddit anymore. I'm not sure they'd let me. But I will quietly update my profile in the next day or two with the rest of this blowout. Talking to my brother, my parents, Lucy's parents, and finally, where Lucy and I stand. One thing is clear. Most of my immediate family relationships are incredibly strained for various reasons. My parents are largely supportive, but that's waning as the reality of our financial loss sets in. Yes, the marriage is still off. That was pretty much a certainty from the start. Lucy's parents are even more pissed, and I'm sure they are crafting voodoo dolls in my image as we speak. Alice, for those wondering, is no longer in jail. She got bailed out by Lucy, and I even lashed out at Lucy for that, calling her her sister's underling. That actually struck a chord with her. She later wrote me a 20-page letter about how her sister always bossed her around throughout childhood. I've read it twice now, and I wish we had talked about this any time in the last 6 years. Maybe things would be different. I don't know. If anyone is still interested, expect a final chapter of this saga in a day or two, and maybe a follow-up after the former wedding date passes. Note by Bowie Findy, August 10th, 2023, and subsequent updates. The following section is an update provided as an edit. Update, August 10th, 2023. This update has taken longer than I originally intended. A lot has happened over the past couple of days, and it wasn't until today, after lunch, that I could sit down and get this out. I'll try to cover as much as I can. First, to address a couple of points from the last post. I don't know much about Sam's divorce beyond that. To my knowledge, he's still in the process. No formal papers yet, but the intention is clear. I'm not in a position to advise him legally or intervene on his behalf. Sam is a grown-ass man, and my role is simply to support him if he asks. This isn't guerrilla marketing for an OnlyFans girl. If it were, I would have done it in my first post, which hit Reddit's front page with over 3 million views. Given that the post got so popular, it's not surprising that bimbo wife Candy, another Redditor, saw her name mentioned. It could have been any one of the hundreds of girls on Reddit. As an aside, I have talked to Candy. She was actually helpful in confirming something for me, and she seems nice. But there's no romance plan here. Candy is married, happily so for almost 2 decades, and frankly, she's way too much for a mere insurance guy like me to handle. So with that out of the way, on to the update. Last time, I assumed my brother Jack had used my office computer to chat with Candy, but it was too late to contact him. I'm one of those guys who, once a problem is in front of him, must actively solve it. This is great for my career, but in situations like this, it was driving me insane. So I took a deep breath, decided to postpone everything, and carried on with what I needed to do. The first task was contacting everyone from my side who was invited to the wedding but hadn't been informed of its cancellation. I had already told my parents, and they contacted my relatives on the day I made up my mind. But Lucy and I hold the complete guest list. Out of respect for my friends, I called instead of texting, even though every phone call led to a lengthy explanation of why the wedding was canceled. I wanted people to know I wasn't being frivolous or just experiencing cold feet. I needed to show respect to those who'd agreed to support us. Because of that, it wasn't until late into the evening that I managed to contact everyone, by which time it was morning in Australia. I then took a breather, made a sandwich in the kitchen, and noticed Lucy wasn't home. I sat down, ate, and thought about what to do with my brother's situation. Let's call him Jack for short. Jack and I have always been close despite him being 13 years older. He was a quasi-parental figure in my life. He was generous with his time, played with me when other teenagers wouldn't, and generally seemed very mature and wise. I respected him greatly. The idea that he had been sexting with a girl, not his wife, on my computer was something I was still grappling with, and I needed to decide what to do. I needed to yell at him to stop, for my own sense of propriety, but I wasn't sure if I'd rat him out to my sister-in-law. It all depended on what he said and whether I believed him. I finished my meal, logged into Facebook, and video called Jack. He works mostly from home in IT, so he was available. It only rang once or twice before he answered. We exchanged pleasantries, and I dove in, asking if he had been using my computer to sex chat with women when he was visiting. Jack's face froze. He leaned off camera, clearly closing his office door, and said, "Yeah, I did. Why?" I swore under my breath and explained that Lucy had implied his flirting was me because he was using my computer. I told him I wasn't happy to take the hit for him and asked point blank if his wife Karen knew about it. He waffled a few seconds, looked sheepish, and said no. Karen didn't know, and he preferred it that way. He went on to say that their relationship had been rough since their youngest was born 4 years ago, mainly in the bedroom. Jack had always been private about intimate details, but this time, he laid it all out. He explained, "There's no amount of socks picked up, laundry folded, dishes washed, or time spent minding children that would get me laid. It was just not happening." So he started spending time in his office at night, working. He even did finger quotes when saying that. His work turned into a hardcore addiction to OnlyFans sites, and, given the privacy of his office, it spiraled out of control quickly. I asked if he was still doing it, and he swore he wasn't. I wanted to believe him, but a niggling feeling told me something was off. Maybe it was all the deceit I'd encountered recently, but I was doubting my own brother, a stand-up guy all my life. I hated being in this situation. The problem was complex. If I wanted to clear my name, I'd need him to tell Lucy it was him all along. But if he did, there was no guarantee Lucy wouldn't spitefully inform Karen. I thought it best if Karen knew, yet I wasn't comfortable potentially dropping a nuke on my brother's marriage over something he claims to have stopped and is now in a moral gray area. I urged him to tell his wife and seek marriage counseling. He said they had been going for the last 6 months, and that, aside from counseling, what really helped him was getting a prescription for generic Viagra. I nearly spit water on my screen at that. He explained that having intimate time a couple of times a week had become possible thanks to the Viagra. The general gist was, "Hey, things are actually heading in the right direction now. Please don't screw this up for us." I really didn't want to be in this position, not just for Jack and Karen's sake, but for my 2 nieces as well. If what Jack was saying was true, I might be tossing a firebomb into a relationship that was just beginning to mend. It was unpredictable. So I decided the best option was to wait and see. After all, I was going to meet him in person in a couple of weeks. Once we had a few drinks, I'd get to the bottom of this. It seemed like the best course of action. That night, I went to bed early. I didn't see Lucy until the next morning. She looked haggard, as if she hadn't slept at all. I asked where she had been, mostly out of habit, after 6 years together. She told me she had gone to the courthouse for Alice's arraignment to post bail, then drove her to her parents' house and spent the night. She made a point of complaining about having to explain to her parents that I had called off the wedding. I asked if her parents knew why, and she barked, "Of course they do." I tried to remain calm, but I was losing it. I bit back, "Are you going to move back there so that they have both girls at home now?" It was childish and petty, but the fact she bailed Alice out of jail annoyed me immensely. She snapped, "You don't need to be an ass about this," to which I retorted, "And you don't need to be Alice's effing underling." I saw Lucy visibly flinch, tears welling up, and I immediately cooled my temper. We stood there, miles apart in the living room, silent for a minute or two, until Lucy continued, "Our parents are going to be here at 3. I facepalmed. I almost went off on her for not consulting me, but that was my ego. I knew I needed to sit down with them, work out the wedding details and remaining deposit, and explain face-to-face why it wasn't happening. So, fine. Let's get it over with. I tried to keep busy. There isn't much to do on a Sunday except waste time. And time wasting isn't fun when you know you're heading into the meat grinder in a few hours. At 3 p.m., our parents arrived. We sat at the large kitchen table Lucy had bought just a month after we closed on the house. A second-hand solid oak piece from Facebook Marketplace that seats 8. Lucy always wanted big, family dinner parties. Just not like this. The next 3 hours were grueling. No one was happy, nor should they be. My own parents offered what support they could. Basically, well, it's your decision to make. Which meant, we think this is crazy too, but we're still backing you. That was fine with me. I didn't need extra stigma from canceling the wedding. Eventually, we worked out a deal regarding the wedding. Try to recover as much money as possible, split it according to contribution, and share any losses. However, when it came to the house, Lucy vehemently objected to my idea of repaying her or her parents for the deposit. Simply put, she didn't intend to move. As you might imagine, Lucy and I had not discussed our living together situation in detail. The fact that I brought up settling the house equity shocked her, implying I expected her to move out. She threw a fit, and I don't blame her. I should have sorted out our relationship status before trying to negotiate with her parents. It really exposed how I felt about our relationship. While our parents might have expected or understood it, Lucy was beside herself. She made it clear, I am not moving out of my house, and we are not breaking up. And that's pretty much how my Sunday night ended. After our parents left, Lucy and I tried to talk further, but we kept circling around the issues. I had to rein in my urge to attack her until we reached some resolution. I was exhausted. I just wanted to turn off my brain. Believe it or not, we ended up sitting on the couch watching a movie in silence until bedtime. We left things with a, "We'll talk about it more tomorrow," and then retreated to separate rooms. Monday morning, and a 20-page letter. On Monday, I woke to find a large handwritten letter slid under our door from Lucy. I skimmed the first few pages, decided to deal with it later, and went to work. When I left, Lucy was still in bed. She must have been up late writing that letter. At the office, I rescheduled meetings and started calling venues and vendors from my list. It was a mixed bag. The catering company insisted I pay most of their fees, as they'd ordered most of the food. I shot back, "Are you expecting me to eat week-old steak?" But my appeal fell on deaf ears. On the other hand, the DJ was incredibly kind and refunded almost all the money. Between calls and work, I read Lucy's letter. Since it was 20 pages, I'll just summarize the gist. Lucy wrote that, ever since childhood, she's been bullied by Alice, and that her way of coping was to go along with whatever Alice wanted to hear. She said that over time, this became her general mode of operation, being afraid to rock the boat, cause problems, or even voice an opinion. I reflected on this, because in looking back at our 6-year relationship, I began to think Lucy was perhaps too perfect a girlfriend. She never disagreed with me, never prioritized her own plans, and always acted like a yes woman, never really letting me see who she truly is. In fact, I can't even be sure that what I saw in those text messages was the real Lucy. It might just be another reflection of Alice and her warts. It may sound weird, but it feels like we are in an unequal relationship. Maybe she loves me for who I am, for wearing my heart on my sleeve, but maybe I only love her for the mirror she holds up to me. I don't know. I've learned more about Lucy in the past few days than in the last 6 years. Her letter was the first real glimpse into her childhood I've seen. That night, we talked about her childhood and behavior. We concluded that she needs help. She's a grown woman, yet she's stuck acting like a child, too scared to displease anyone for fear of her sister's wrath, her parents' disapproval, or the loss of love from the one she cares about. This is no way to have a relationship. I feel more confident than ever that calling off the wedding was absolutely the right decision. In fact, it could not be more correct. That night, after our talk, I went to bed with much less angst than in the previous few days. If you made it through this long-ass post, comment, Daddy. End of main post. Note by Boyfindi appears in the comments, August 10th, 2023. Final update. This update was provided as an edit in the same post. It's about 8:30 p.m. right now, and I'm writing this from my buddy's house. His name is Mark, a former co-worker in the same field. For context, I work as a field analyst in the CU department of an insurance carrier, basically a private detective investigating workers' compensation fraud. As I hinted earlier, Sam asked for my help finding out who the other guy was that Alice was cheating on him with. All we had was a name. Let's call him Jake. I started by going through LinkedIn via Alice's connections, but that turned up nothing, which was strange. Sam mentioned that Alice was supposed to go out for drinks tonight after work and said she wouldn't be home until around 9 or 10. I understood his suspicions right away. I told him I'd help, but he needed to come with me. I then contacted my buddy Mark, explained the situation, and he agreed to meet us later that day. Our first move was to drive over to Sam's parents' house so they could watch their granddaughter. I don't know what Sam told them, as I waited in the car. Then, we went to Alice's workplace, one of those large commercial strip mall centers with nondescript offices in a row, in a big, open parking lot. We drove until we found Alice's car, and I had Sam unlock it with the spare keys. I handed Sam a voice-activated recorder and a GPS tracker to place in the car. Once that was done, we parked a bit down the street and waited for Mark to arrive and for Alice to leave. Mark showed up about 20 minutes later, hopped in, and about an hour later, Alice emerged from her office with two girlfriends and a tall, younger-looking man with sandy blonde hair. They were obviously holding hands, and I thought, damn, Alice, you're making it easy for me. I took a couple of pictures from the car, then waited for Alice to leave in her car so we could start tracking her. At first, I thought she might go to a hotel, but she didn't. Instead, she drove to a reasonably nice bar and grill in a good part of town and parked on the street. I drove by as she got out and entered the establishment, then found my own parking spot and reviewed the plan. We sent Mark in first, since no one knew him, with two tasks: get comp pictures of Alice and Jake, and serve as my alibi. Sam and I waited in the car for about 20 minutes until I received the first text messages from Mark, pictures of Alice and Jake, making out in front of their two female co-workers. Sam's suspicions were confirmed. They were helping Alice hide the affair from him. He was very upset and angry. One of the co-workers is married, and that couple are close friends with Sam and Alice. Both have toddlers of a similar age. I asked Sam if that was enough, but he insisted he really wanted to know who the guy was. I told him we'd find out later, but he practically begged me to wait. I texted Mark that I was coming in, then entered the bar. The first thing I saw was Alice and her crew laughing and drinking at a tall round table near the front window. I paused, feigned surprise, and called out, "Hi, what are you doing here?" She was shocked to see me. Immediately, everyone tensed. Alice quickly introduced me as her sister's fiancé and announced that we are getting married in 2 weeks. A flood of congratulations followed. I thanked them, extended my hand to the blonde guy, hoping he'd introduce himself properly, and I was taken aback when he wasn't named Jake. I introduced myself to everyone else, then told Alice I was there to meet a coworker. I waved to Mark and excused myself. Once with Mark, I told him the guy's name. We both pulled out our phones and got to work. It didn't take long to find him. He had social media profiles and even a couple of court case judgments. Everything fell into place when we discovered that Jake is his middle name. At that point, I was just grateful that Alice wasn't cheating on Sam with two different coworkers. It turns out that Jake is 26, married, and has a 1-year-old daughter. This just keeps getting better. I texted Sam the guy's name and decided to push my luck by telling him to wait a few more minutes. I was basically playing babysitter at the bar. I was totally visible to Alice and her crew. I could see from the corner of my eye that no one was happy about this, and my presence was clearly ruining the night. And that was good. I let this go on for about 10 minutes, then told Sam to text Alice that he'd spend the night at his parents' house with their daughter. Shortly after, I saw Alice taking out her phone, showing it to Jake, and then everyone started packing up. Alice came over, said goodnight, and asked if Lucy and I wanted to come over for dinner this weekend. I smiled, said that sounded great, and wished her and her coworkers a good night. Mark and I then paid our bill and hurried back to the waiting Sam. That was almost 2 hours ago. I received one text from Sam saying it was done, and he was heading to his parents' house for real this time. But my phone hasn't been blowing up, so I don't know what else is happening with Alice. I've been at Mark's since then. That basically concludes my part in Sam's story. If he was smart and followed my advice, he was recording when he entered the house. I'll find out later. My biggest priority now is to go home and tell Lucy that the wedding is off. I know she's 100% going to take it badly. There's no way she won't. But as I said, I just can't marry her right now. I don't know what the future holds for us, or if we'll ever be together, but we are definitely not getting married anytime soon. For those asking, why didn't you talk to her first? Why didn't you confront her? Are you kidding me? She stone-cold lied in front of her brother-in-law, someone she's known for about 10 years, and claimed he's a great husband and father. Babe, maybe you're naive enough to think someone can lie that coldly and then tell you the truth later, but I'm not wired that way. Until that moment, I never had reason to second-guess or distrust Lucy. But she was literally untrustworthy in front of my face, and I'm not about to let it slide, or expect her to suddenly be honest with me. You don't know what it's like to have your entire view of someone shift in an instant. It's disorienting, and frankly, panic-inducing. I'm actually impressed I kept my head and followed my instincts instead of pressing her immediately, because that led me to the truth. It would have been too easy for her to lie and delete the texts. And then, I would never have seen the horrible things she said, never known how duplicitous and two-faced she can be, and never realized how little I truly knew about her. I'm going home to talk to Lucy. I'll update later with the final verdict. Don't expect it to be a good one. Final thoughts, for now. This post is turning into a novel, and I've blown most of the morning when I should be working to get it all out. I feel better for venting, but there are probably another 2 to 3 posts worth of details left. I'm not going to post them on this subreddit anymore. I'm not sure they'd let me. But I will update my profile in the next day or two with the rest of the blowout, talking to my brother, my parents, Lucy's parents, and finally where Lucy and I stand. One thing is clear. Most of my immediate family relationships are incredibly strained. My parents are largely supportive, but that's dwindling as the reality of our financial loss sets in. Yes, the wedding is off. That was a certainty from the start. Lucy's parents are even more pissed, and I'm sure they're crafting voodoo dolls in my image as we speak. Alice, for those wondering, is no longer in jail. Lucy bailed her out, and I even lashed out at Lucy for that, calling her her sister's underling, which apparently struck a chord with her, since she later wrote me a 20-page letter about how her sister always bossed her around during childhood. I've read it twice, and I wish we'd talked about this at some point in the last 6 years. Maybe things would have been different. I don't know. If you made it through this long-ass video, comment Daddy. I was framed and fired, and look what happened to them: divorce, jail, and deportations. This is a long one, but if you stick with it until the end, you will learn how I was framed and fired from my job and accidentally set off a chain reaction that led to a staff overhaul with several managers being fired or moved to other restaurants. The general manager being fired and getting a divorce, and one of the managers being investigated by the FBI and ultimately arrested, as well as several of the workers being deported. Here we go. My job and role. I used to work at an upscale restaurant owned by a large corporate entity that owns several different restaurant brands. I worked there for about 3.5 years before they eventually fired me. But more about that later. First, I want to give an idea of my role there. My role at that job was a little of everything. Since the day I started working there, I took it upon myself to learn as much as possible. I was very persistent with management when I wanted to learn a new department. I had started as a server, but eventually had worked my way into different departments and job titles like carryout, hosting, bartending, bar backing, banquets, catering, and deliveries. My singular goal while working there was to make myself available for as many hours as possible. I was being paid about $12 an hour, though that fluctuated if I was working as a bartender or server and making tips. Eventually, it was noticed by management how I fit best into one of the non-tipped positions. I was so good at it that they decided to try me out as an unofficial supervisor over the team that worked in carryout, catering, and deliveries, as those were all one department. I knew this was going to ultimately mean a few fewer hours, since I would only be working one department, so I negotiated with management to increase my pay by about $1.50, since I was taking on additional responsibilities. They were satisfied with the pay increase. I wasn't trying to get as much money as possible. I just wanted to be able to pay my bills and still have a little money left over for fun. I was living in the highly taxed city of Chicago, which is in the already highly taxed state of Illinois, so it was pretty difficult to make ends meet and still have money left to enjoy my life. I am a person of simple pleasures, and I can enjoy things for long periods of time, so it didn't take much money to be happy. A video game could hold my attention for several months, sometimes even years. I had a family pet that I had brought with me to Chicago, so that counted as an extra expense. Not long after I started this position as the unofficial supervisor, I got a girlfriend, so I was also going out more often and spending money on her. With my position and some smart budgeting, I was able to afford all of this. The management environment. The money wasn't an issue, but management had a high turnover rate, so the incoming managers often did not know what the department entailed or how important hours were to workers of these departments. Eventually, it was noted that our current general manager was going to be fired and replaced. The incoming general manager was supposed to be some rock star when it came to improving restaurants. We looked up his name and found him as the first search result on Google, but the entry wasn't some glowing review of his work ethic or of his impeccable ability to improve the way a restaurant runs. It was actually a mugshot and a police report filed for repeated domestic abuse. This is important later. We'll call him Grant. Shortly after Grant came in and started making changes, one of our best managers gave her resignation. She refused to work with him and, like an oracle, told us to expect lots of sexual harassment, misogynistic comments, and for him to eventually run this place into the ground. Not long after she left, our general manager, Grant, began replacing our current managers with hand-picked people that he had worked with in the past. Eventually, all but one manager was replaced. That manager was the kitchen manager we will call Carlo. Carlo and my department. Carlo had been there since I had started working there. He seemed to be something of a chameleon, as in his values and ethics seemed to change depending on who his boss was. Honestly, I sort of applaud his survival instincts, but ultimately see him as a suck-up and a traitor. Grant never really replaced the manager for our department, so it ran without a lot of oversight, unless you count me as the supervisor. We didn't constantly have someone breathing down our necks about how things should be done. Our department had some hiccups here and there, but it still ran really smoothly. Since we did not have our own manager, we often had to radio for a manager to come help us out on things that needed a manager card for approval. Carlo would always be the one to answer these calls, since the kitchen was closest to our department. Over time, the new team of managers started to see Carlo as the manager of our department as well. However, the hourly team that worked there still saw me as their supervisor. This meant that any time Carlo was trying to make changes that would ultimately hurt us, the team relied on me to mitigate those disasters, or to negotiate with Carlo to let us do our jobs the way we had already proven worked really well over several months. Carlo and I would butt heads dozens of times. He and I were constantly arguing about how important hours were to the workers in this department. He had it in his head that we should be living off of tips like servers. But since most of our orders were carryout, they came in through Grubhub, and Grubhub doesn't tip. We didn't have a lot of deliveries in a day, and the tips we got from those were maybe $10 if we were lucky. But splitting $10 four ways doesn't add up to a lot. It just showed that Carlo had no clue what he was talking about. The meeting and the promise. Eventually, we had a meeting with Grant, Carlo, and all the workers of this department. It was marketed as a chance to voice all our grievances and concerns with the changes they wanted to make, with no chance of retaliation. So the workers did exactly that. They talked about how Carlo was trying to cut hours, even though he isn't our actual manager. When it was brought up that they were attempting to hire someone to be the manager, the team suggested that I take over, since I had already been supervising them and running things smoothly for the last several months. I was also the one that management consulted with when writing schedules, as I had an understanding of the days some workers could and couldn't work, depending on their school schedules or family life. I could see, at the moment it was suggested, that Grant and Carlo made the decision on the spot that I had to be gotten rid of. Although they didn't say it, I could see the look they gave each other, and instinctively knew that my days at this place were numbered, and my job was going to be getting the axe one way or another. They made a bunch of promises to us about not cutting hours. They told us that they would stop sending all but one person home early, and only leaving one person to clean everything and close up by themselves, as this wasn't a small department, and it was simply too much for one person to do alone, while still meeting health and safety standards. They promised that whatever hours we were scheduled for, we would work. We weren't trying to be unreasonable, so we told them that we usually have 3 or 4 people scheduled to work our department. They could cut 2 of them early, but we always needed at least 2 people here to help close properly. The promise was made that they would always have at least 2 closers. The betrayal and my firing. However, only about a week later, they started sending all but one person home early again every night. One night, they tried to do it while I was scheduled as the closer, and we had just returned from a massive catering event, and there was an unbelievable amount of cleanup left to do for one person. When Carlo came in and tried to send everyone except me home, I stepped up and told him that he was consistently breaking the promise he had made to us during the meeting. He looked me square in the face and told me to stop complaining about it. And if I was going to keep trying to talk to him about him breaking his promises, he could easily find someone who could work my shift. I quickly realized that this was an assassination attempt on my job. He wanted me to press it further, so I backed off and started cleaning. I ended up having to stay way late, and that meant overtime pay anyway. I got a write-up for that, since we aren't allowed to work overtime without a manager's approval. When I refused to sign the write-up, pointing out that I had tried to explain to Carlo that I wouldn't be able to clean up all that stuff alone before my scheduled shift ended, I was allowed to leave without signing the write-up, but only because the HR rep that was present at the time wasn't one of Grant's cronies. Skip ahead to the day I was fired. It is important to note at this point that I always came into work an hour early, since we lived in Chicago and food was expensive. However, at our job, we were allowed to have as much free soup and bread as we liked. So I would come into work 1 hour early every day, so I could have some soup and bread for lunch before my shift. But on this day, when I walked into the kitchen to get myself some soup, one of the line cooks told me that he had a dish that had been canceled after he cooked it, and Carlo had told him to give it to someone. He assured me Carlo had already comped it, and that it was free to take for whoever wanted it. It just so happened to be my favorite appetizer, so I happily took the free food. Not long after I got to my booth, both Grant and Carlo approached me and asked me if I had put in a ticket for that food. I told them that the line cook had given it to me and said it was the canceled order that Carlo had already comped. Carlo looked dumbfounded and said he had no idea what I was talking about. So Grant told me, "I think you know. That's theft. Go ahead and finish the food and then grab your stuff and go. That's the last meal you'll be having here." I tried to explain to them that I had been given this food by the line cook, but they refused to listen, so I offered to take them to the kitchen with me to clear it up with the cook. But by the time I had gone back to the kitchen with them, the line cook had already gone home for the day. I had no choice but to gather my stuff, say my goodbyes, and head home. On my way out, I told the people working in my department exactly what had happened. They were shocked and angry, but mostly sad to see me go. I decided that, on my way out, I would stop by the accounting office and pick up any tips that may have been dropped for me that week, just to make sure I didn't get screwed out of that money before heading down. I had the gut feeling to just set my phone to record, and I stuffed it into my pocket with the camera rolling. Although the video was entirely black, since it was in my pocket, I did manage to get a pretty muffled recording of Grant and Carlo's voices through the door discussing how things had gone as planned, and that they had been trying to get rid of me ever since the meeting with my department. I knocked on the door, and they hushed up before opening it. They asked what I was still doing there, and I asked for my tips. They gathered what was in the safe for me and handed it over. Despite my anger rising at what I had just heard, I decided not to burn this bridge just yet, because perhaps I could nuke it later. I offered a handshake to both managers, thanked them for the opportunity to work there, and left, making sure to pull my phone out of my pocket and record the front of the restaurant with the sign showing its name and logo. Working in a restaurant, you learn to always cover your own ass. It's true for most jobs, but something was just telling me I would need this all later. If I was being accused of theft, I wanted to be able to prove it wasn't true if it ever came up in future job interviews, which is exactly what happened and where this all started going nuclear. On the train ride home, I sent some messages and made some posts on some local groups on Facebook, saying that I had just been fired and that I was looking for a job as quickly as possible. By the time I got off at my stop, I had already set up an interview for later that day. I was offered the job about 5 minutes into the interview, but after going over the details, it didn't sound like it was for me, so I turned it down. I interviewed a few other places and found one that was a damn good fit, with a hefty pay increase compared to my previous job, and I wouldn't have to deal with customers. It was an auditing job for a logistics company. However, during the interview with the manager of this job, he mentioned he had already called my previous place of employment and spoken with the general manager, Grant. Grant had told him that I had been fired for theft. Luckily for me, the manager I was interviewing with asked me to tell him more about that, and he was willing to let me pull out my phone and find the recording. I asked if the voice in the video was the same as the one he spoke on the phone with. It was. That was confirmation enough for him that I hadn't made a fake video. He listened to the two managers in the video admit that they had set me up, and watched to the end when I showed the front of the restaurant, complete with the logo and name. The manager interviewing me, who we'll start calling Brett, hired me immediately and asked me to send him the recording, which I did. The aftermath and corporate fallout. I thought that was the end of it. About 7 months later, after settling into this job quite nicely, HR sent out a "Welcome all our new team members" email, which listed all the newest hires, some facts about them, and had pictures of them all. They send these out every time they hire a new round of people. One of them, Alex, was a former coworker who worked with me at the restaurant. We had worked at the host stand together, so I was pretty glad to see someone I knew and liked coming onto the team. I sought out his desk and went and said hello and asked why he left the restaurant. He hadn't left willingly. He'd been laid off because the company was under investigation. It had started as a relatively small matter. The corporate entity that owned the restaurant chain had received an email with an attached video. That video that had been filmed from inside my pocket. That was cause enough for corporate to send someone to investigate internally. Alex was pretty surprised that I hadn't heard anything about it, since there had been numerous attempts to get in touch with me. As soon as he said that, I logged into the old email I had used when I first applied for the job at the restaurant. I had at least 24 emails asking me to come in to discuss my employment and termination. I never replied. I just didn't care enough anymore. I'd also changed my number since then, so they hadn't been able to contact me by phone. Alex continued explaining that before corporate had sent someone, Grant and Carlo had talked with my department and tried to offer them all a small pay increase to spin corporate a story about how I was incompetent at my job and failed to live up to my duty. The day the corporate auditor showed up, there had been a small exodus of people from my old department. They quit on the spot in front of the lady from corporate, let's call her Denise, and made sure to rat out Grant and Carlo before leaving. Strike one for both of them. Strike two came a couple of days after Denise showed Grant and Carlo the recording that had kicked all of this off. They denied it vehemently, but there was no mistaking Grant's voice. It's unique. Not only that, but the video also picked up their voice and mine when we shook hands and had a friendly parting of the ways, which was something they had already bragged about to Denise, thinking it made them look better that we were able to part on good terms. This wasn't the actual strike two. That came when it was clear they needed to be separated, so Denise sent Carlo to work at another restaurant owned by our parent company and temporarily demoted Grant to manager. This tore them apart. They had once been an inseparable evil team, but the pressure of the investigation must have pushed them over the edge. They ended up at each other's throats on Facebook, on a public post on the company page. The post had since been deleted, but Alex explained it as the following. Carlo had been pictured in the Facebook post on the restaurant page, and Grant made a passive-aggressive comment about how Carlo shouldn't even be in the picture, since he had been moved to another restaurant due to misconduct. Carlo saw this comment and said something along the lines of, "At least when people Google my name, I don't show up as the guy that punched his wife." To which Grant responded, "Very funny from the guy who is cheating on his wife with April's sister." Not her real name, but April was the girl they appointed to officially supervise my old department after they fired me. The unofficial supervisor. Carlo replied, "Like you haven't tried with half the waitresses. They all have stories about you trying to sugar daddy them." The post was deleted, but not before it had been seen by Denise, the auditor. That was officially strike two. Strike three came the next day, when Denise started interviewing the female waitstaff and bartenders, seeing if any of them could confirm that Grant had tried to make a move on them. All of them were interviewed separately. Several of them had similar stories. Every girl that confirmed Grant had made a move on them all said he had offered to be their sugar daddy if they would send nudes or stay after closing to fool around with him. Grant was fired, but that isn't the worst of it. Denise, the auditor, wasn't just some random woman from corporate. She was the old regional manager for this area and had personally hired Grant's wife as the general manager of another restaurant in the city. So she called up the restaurant Grant's wife worked at and told Grant's wife everything she had learned from the female waitstaff. We learned later that they had gotten a divorce over him trying to cheat on her after she'd already given him a second chance to change, after he had beat her. I don't know what compelled her to give him a second chance after something like that, but she sure didn't give him a third. After firing Grant, the line cook who had given me the food was interviewed by Denise. I don't know how it came up, but at some point, he had let it slip that he was an illegal immigrant. She had his file in her hand with an Illinois ID and social security number on file, so this confused her, and she pressed him for more information. It turns out that Carlo had some connections and had his own miniature black market going on where he would have faked social security cards and IDs made for the illegal immigrants he was hiring at reduced wages. It had been going on for at least 4 years. Needless to say, this is a felony. With the potential PR nightmare that she was likely dealing with, she felt she had no choice but to alert the authorities. Local PD enlisted the help of the FBI, since some of the evidence led them beyond the jurisdiction of the local police. Carlo was arrested and quickly gave up the names of the people working that he had sold social security cards and IDs to. I'm not sure if he gave up all of them, but he did name drop about 14 people, and of those 14, at least half were deported by the time Alex had been let go. One of them was the line cook that had given me the food the day I was fired. Alex went on to explain that it had all started with me being fired, but I never sent that recording to corporate. I'd only sent it to Brett when he hired me. I asked him about it, and he told me he had sent it to his wife, since she was a lawyer. He wanted to see if I had a case to maybe sue my old job, since what they had done was wrong. But he also remembered that when we had first talked about it, I had said, I'm not the type of person who would try to make millions off an entire company because of the mistakes of two. But I'd also said that it would be pretty sweet to see them lose their jobs too. So his wife had been the one that sent it to the legal team at the corporate HQ of my old restaurant job. My boss showed it to his wife, who forwarded it to the real head honchos of my old job. They were both just trying to get two scumbags fired for what they did to me, but ended up pulling a thread so long that it didn't end until there were sexual harassment accusation revelations about managers cheating on their wives with girls related to people they had placed in positions of authority, a divorce, mass layoffs, pending investigations, a staff overhaul, an FBI investigation into what could be considered black market dealings of falsified government-issued documents, and at least a half-dozen deportations, and probably as many as 14. I don't know if this counts as nuclear revenge, as I didn't actively pursue it, but Alex ended up showing me that even if it wasn't revenge, it was definitely nuclear, and the crater it had left was massive.